Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our November session of TSCRA's Ranching 101 program. Today, we have Dr. Arn Anderson to talk about when are the situations that you need to call a veterinarian, and we are looking forward to this presentation today. As many of you are jumping on, I just wanted to give you a few quick reminders and some things to look forward to in the future. Next month will be, of course, our last Ranching 101 of the year. That will be on Tuesday, December 14th from 1 to 2 p.m. And that topic will be how to leverage your TSCRA member benefits. There are an innumerate number of benefits as a TSCRA member, from discounts to some of our partners, to our insurance company, to leveraging the special rangers at your disposal. There are a list of things that TSCRA members have available to them, and we will cover all of those in our December session hosted by Wayne Cockrell and Alan Curry, who are the chair and vice chair of our TSCRA Membership Development Committee. They're looking forward to spending an hour with you on Tuesday, December 14th. We are also, before we get started, going to hear a quick word from our sponsor. Today's session and all of our Ranching 101 sessions are sponsored by Lone Star Ag Credit. So at this time, we will now play a short video courtesy of Lone Star.
My name is Jason Jones, and I work for Lone Star Ag Credit. Our mission is to help rural America. It's here to help the farmers, the ranchers, the part-time farmers, the guys wanting to buy recreational land. If we do our job right, we keep the rural communities running. The farmers, the ranchers we're financing, they're putting money into local grocery stores, into the tire companies. In the big picture, we're keeping everything moving for our rural communities to keep them alive.
Thank you so much to Lone Star Ag Credit for being such a great partner of TSCRA and for continuously sponsoring our Ranching 101 session. In closure, if you have questions throughout the webinar today, before we turn it over to Dr. Anderson, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see two boxes. One is a chat box and one is a Q&A box. Please feel free to drop your questions there at any time, and then we will grab them either throughout the webinar or at the end of the webinar and make sure we get all of those questions answered. So again, if you have any questions throughout, drop them in the Q&A or chat box at any time throughout the webinar. And with that, Dr. Anderson, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, that sounds great. I appreciate all y'all coming and, oh, there we go. Okay, and listening to this presentation. It's extremely strange for me not to be in a room and not to be seeing you face to face. This is like when I used to drive down the road to go give presentations at different universities, and I would give my presentation on the road as I was driving. And I realized after doing that for a while that people driving by thought I was talking to myself. I guess that's okay. That's sort of what it looks like I'm doing today, just talking into a computer. So our topic today is basically, let me start with this. First of all, this is my grandson getting ready to go to work. He was day working. He's all of 5 years old, but this is a great Dr. Pepper commercial. So if any of y'all know anybody at Dr. Pepper and they'd like to pay me a lot of money for this picture, I'd let them have it. But let's get started. If you can change slides. Annie? There we go. Okay, good. Okay, so basically our topic today is when to make the call. So when to call the veterinarian. This presentation is normally 4 hours long when we're able to do this in person. And we're going to cram it together today and put it into 1 hour. So let's change the slide again. Okay, so as y'all get started in the beef business, or if you're already in the beef business, a lot of times there's a lot of hesitation to call a veterinarian. A lot of times we don't know that we actually have a problem, or we imagine that we have a problem and we really don't. So that's sort of what we're going to cover today. And I started off with 4 basic points. They all begin with the word before, and it's better sooner than later. So we'll get started. If you're just getting into the cattle business or you're fixing to start another cattle operation, it's always best to call the veterinarian before the cattle actually arrive. A lot of times, a lot of mistakes can be avoided. They can help you with biosecurity. They can help you choose the breed that fits your area of Texas or Oklahoma. They can help you choose the cattle age, body condition score. So it's often better if you call a veterinarian and sit down and visit and share your plans. Obviously, it's better to call before a problem develops. And if a problem has developed, it's better to call before it escalates out of control. And we're going to talk about that later. What is escalation beyond control? And I had a mentor of mine out in Amarillo that I would call with problems on feedlot cattle. And one time he said, you know, Arn, no matter what you do, not all of them are going to die, but you certainly want to call before they do all die. We'll talk about what some trigger points are and how we can identify those. Okay, slide. Good. So this is setting action points. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define what an action point is, and that really depends on your experience level. I've got clients, visited with one this morning, where we can solve a lot of problems from 3 hours away. And they've been in the cattle business for going on 60 years, and they inherited it from their family. Their experience level is high. So their action points are going to be different than a lawyer friend of mine that just bought himself 5 Brangus cows. Those cows don't look right. He's going to call. That's an action point. It's just at what point do you need to make a decision? You base this on these things at the bottom of the list, which are physical findings, chronicity, which is how long has the problem been going on? What's the number affected? How many have died? And how much money you're willing to lose. I've got clients that if they lose one animal, this is a very bad deal, and it's time to get started. I have clients that say if you own cattle, you're going to lose them, and they're willing to lose a lot more, have a lot higher death loss. So your action point, I guess, if we're going to define it, is just at what point do you become uncomfortable enough that you want to call in a veterinarian, to call in medical expertise. Anyway, we're going to talk about each one of these so that you all can figure out what your action point is and what makes you want to call a veterinarian to start with. Annie? Okay, so experience. I need y'all to prioritize your informational source. There's a lot of danger in getting your information off Google. There's a lot of danger in just getting it from the feed store. We've seen that as we've worked through this pandemic in human medicine. You know, I've got clients that are getting their human medicine information from a livestock feed store. You need to prioritize, figure out what your best source is and how you get that information. This list of information sources will change. It will change as you get more experience. It will change as you become more comfortable raising cattle. It will develop over time, and you may become more sophisticated. You may be able to access technology websites that give you excellent information. What I'm after here is make sure you're getting the best information that you can. There's many times that I have visited with clients that have taken their information from their neighbor or from their person at the feed store or from somebody at church. And the information may have been good when it was dealt to that individual, but by the time it works its way down to my client, it's like playing the telephone game, and they're getting part of the information, but not all of it. I urge you to utilize technology. I urge you to go to Google and type in what you're looking up. Just be very careful how you use it without getting a second opinion. One of the most dangerous things we can do in cattle and in the veterinary medicine part of bovine production is believing your own story. What I mean by that is you will convince yourself that you have a certain disease. You will convince yourself that your cattle are ill or this has happened to your cattle. And in actuality, it's not even close. And you're hesitant at that point to take advice from anybody else because you have begun to believe your own story. That's why I want to make sure that you develop a list of informational sources, whether, you know, your veterinarian should be in there, your county agent should be in there, certainly use technology. You can use animal breeders as far as genetics, but make sure that your informational source is the best you can achieve, not the easiest, but the best. True information, true data on cattle production, you know, there's some very tight bookends there. There's some real rigid rules that we follow to try to determine if something is true or factual. Slide. Okay, so one thing that you have to do is you have to know what's normal before you can realize if this is under the heading of physical findings. You have to know what's normal before you can define if you even have a problem. This is sort of the fun part if you're just getting started in beef cattle production, or if you've been in it for a while, because you can always use the excuse, you know, I need to go check my cows, and you can sit on the back of the tailgate on your pickup, and you can sit there with a cup of coffee or whatever beverage you want to drink, and you can look out over your herd and just watch them on a normal day. You need to figure out what's normal in your cattle before you can really choose what's abnormal. So TPR, it's the top one. TPR stands for temperature, pulse, and respiration. It's what's normal. If I were in the class right now, I'd ask each one of you, I'd walk around and say, what's the normal temperature of a cow? What's the normal pulse of a cow? What's the normal respiration of a cow? A lot of you can stand in your field and you can watch your cattle and say, that cow's breathing too hard, or that calf's ears are down and he's not moving. But I need you to get online and look up what is normal for temperature, pulse, and respiration, and then figure out how to acquire that. I had an employee one time that went out to take a temperature on a horse, and he didn't return to the clinic for a long time. Finally went out to check on him, and he was still trying to put the thermometer under the horse's tongue. You need to know how to take a temperature on a cow on a normal day. It should be about 102. On a pulse, to determine the pulse, you need to look at the jugular vein is a good way. You can listen to the heart is a good way. You need to know where those structures are on a cow and how to access them. The pulse on a cow, just on an average day, is about 60. And the respiration is about 20. And you can just sit on the back of your pickup and watch a cow breathe or watch a calf breathe. If they're breathing with their mouth open, that's not normal. If they're breathing over that, sometimes it's related to environment. If it's 112, like it gets up here in North Texas, that can make them breathe harder. It can increase their temperature and increase their pulse. But you need, if you talk to your veterinarian and you think you have a problem, and you're able to say, well, the temperature is elevated, the pulse is elevated, and the respiratory rate is elevated, or in really bad cases, all three of those are really low, that gives him or her a lot of information to deal with. So learn how to do a TPR. The next thing is body condition score. I wish I was in the class with y'all, because I'd say, how many of y'all think your cattle are in good shape? You have to learn how to do a body condition score. It's based on a scale of 1 to 9, with 1 being death munching on a cracker and 9 being so obese they can't walk. We want somewhere in the 5 range. There's a really good app that you can get. There's several of them now, but the really good one comes out of the University of Nebraska. We had a little episode with this. I used it in a class that I was giving. It allows you to take pictures and then compare the body condition score of the cow that you have on the photograph and what they have in the computer. It works extremely well, but you just don't want to do it on any participants in your audience when you're giving a lecture. I tried to take the body condition score on a female audience member, and this turned out to be a nightmare. But get the app, learn how to do body condition scores on your cattle. It's better, every time that you run your cattle through the chute, you should be doing a BCS on them. And sometimes it's better to get your neighbor to do the BCS for you, because they're less likely to lie. They're less likely to say, my cattle are fat, when your cattle are really thin. Body condition score lets us know the general health of the animal. Is their nutrition adequate? Is their parasite load too high? Do they have a disease process that's going through them that's making them lose weight? We sell beef by the pound. This is how you make your money. Cattle breed better if they're in better body condition score, not fat, not thin, but just about a 5. And so it's important that you learn how to do this. So you need to learn to do a TPR, learn what's normal. You need to learn what good body condition score is and how to do it. You need to perform a body condition score routinely throughout the year, at least every season, so 4 times a year. You can sit on the back of your truck and you can watch your cows chew their cud. Really simple, something my grandfather taught me. And if they're not chewing their cud, you got a problem. Again, this takes observation. It takes time. It's realizing what is normal. Also, noise. If you've been in a group of cows, you know that they make all kinds of noises. But if you can hear them breathing, if you can hear their GI tract from your truck, if you can hear their joints creaking and cracking as you watch them walk by, you may have a problem. So again, we're aiming at what is normal. Normal urine and feces. A lot of clients call us in the springtime that their calves have diarrhea. We need to come out right away. It's just from green grass, so they don't have a problem. But you need to know as the year goes on, what is normal for their urine and defecation? What does normal cow manure look like? There are people that have PhDs, especially in the dairy industry. They have PhDs where they go around and examine feces all day long. You need to know what color urine is supposed to be. You need to know how often they should urinate. Again, we're aiming at that normal. Any animal that has a failure of senses, it can't see, it can't hear, you need to call a veterinarian right away. Watch your cattle. If they're lifting their feet real high as they walk, they may be blind. If they're running into stuff, if they stay in one place and everybody else moves off, you have a problem. Any animal that's, and we just covered this, any animal that's unable to move or get up or down, this requires medical management fairly swiftly. And then the percentage of the animal occupied, and this caused a lot of laughs the last time I was down there in person. People thought I was joking, so I've put the word seriously in parentheses off to the side. If you have one skin lesion on a 1,000-pound cow and it's the size of a pinhead, this may not be an issue. But if your entire cow is a giant scab or has lost all its hair, or your bull is a wart from the tip of his nose to the tip of his tail, this is a problem. So the percentage of the animal occupied. Physical findings are extremely important in determining whether you are out of your comfort zone and need help, or whether you can handle the situation. And a lot of times, especially nowadays, we'll get clients that have been well trained on this. They'll send us a video on their cell phone and they'll give us the stuff. They'll tell us what the TPR is, what the body condition score is. They'll describe the feces. They'll describe the animal's gait. They'll describe how long it's been going on. So these findings will help you, 1, determine when you're supposed to call a veterinarian, and 2, when you do call a veterinarian, they may eliminate the need for a farm call, or they may outline the fact that you have a true emergency. Okay, next slide. Okay, so chronicity is something that we talk about, and we use it to determine if it's a medical situation or not. This means, has the situation been going on for an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year, or the life of the animal? The fact that it's been going on for 6 months and you call on a Sunday afternoon and want somebody to come out, it doesn't make a lot of sense. What we want to know is, how long has the situation that you're seeing, how long has the TPR been abnormal? How long has the animal been thin compared to the rest of the herd? So you need to have some way of determining this and letting your veterinarian know that. So, if you found it today and it's pretty bad, it probably needs to be seen. If it came on quickly, or did it come on slowly? Have you noticed the animal slowly getting more lethargic? Or did we just go from normal to on the ground? These are very important. We get to the middle one here is essential. You need to have a record system. Today, with iPads, with cell phones, with tablets, this is really pretty easy. You can keep track of all your cows. We have a very small cow herd because I work on more cows. When I come home, about the last thing I want to see is a cow. But in our cow herd, my wife has all 25 of them listed on her tablet, and she can tell you when they calved, what drugs they've received, when they were born, when they were bred. She has their data, and she can fill in, as can you, all kinds of stuff, like when they got sick, when we first notice it, what are the signs, what is the response to treatment. This will help you a lot in determining if you need to call a veterinarian. There's a fact out there, and it's been proven many, many times, that regardless of what you do, eventually 80% of sick cattle will get better. They get better on their own. It just takes a while, and you lose a lot of weight, and you lose a lot of production, and we make our money on producing calves and gaining weight. So if you think that the animal's ill, you can save money by getting a veterinarian out there quickly. Still, some of these animals will get better on their own. Again, I've already said not all will die. And remember that sooner is always better than later. Next slide. Okay, this is a point. This is a good day crew if y'all need them. I like the one on the little pony with his hat pulled down over his eyes. Actually, those are my grandchildren. So if y'all have any questions at this point, I could try to figure out how to access those. Let me see. If I press this button, what happens? Is cancer eye treatable? I'll just use first names. So John, is cancer eye treatable? It depends on what, again, how much of the eye is occupied, how long has it been there? Can the animal still see? Some are. We freeze some, we cut some off, we remove some eyes if it's really advanced. And then there's some that are so advanced the animal needs to be euthanized. So again, it goes back to answer your question, John. It just goes back to chronicity, the amount of the animal occupied, the severity of it, and how much of the eye is occupied. Is there another question? Let me see. Yep. Have you seen many orthopedic injuries from feral hogs creating holes? I have two large adult animals come up lame in the rear leg this year. The answer to that is no. Scott, I haven't seen that at all. What we see from feral hogs are more along the lines of diseases. So we see lepto, really chronic. We can see brucellosis from wild hogs. We had an opportunity on a ranch up here to test a trailer load of 50 wild pigs that have been caught. Every one of those pigs tested positive for lepto and multiple forms of leptosporidia. That's a disease that can wipe out a cow's kidneys and it can cause her to abort. Later that year on the same ranch, 2 cowboys that had been butchering wild hogs came down with lepto. It is a very dangerous disease. Anyway, so I don't see injuries from hogs tearing up stuff. So, and I got my old roommate from Texas A&M is on this. That's pretty funny. Okay, so we'll move on. How long do I wait before I help a cow calving? Okay, we may get to some of this later, but we have a rule here that if it's a heifer, we want to see her within an hour of when you see her first calving. And if it's an adult cow, we want you to move ahead in about 30 minutes. We want you not to pull any calves unless you've seen what we call the rule of 3. So you need a nose and 2 feet, or you need a tail and 2 feet. But remember, it's going to take heifers a longer amount of time. And by progress, I mean, If you walk out there and you see amniotic fluid bag hanging out, and then you come back 30 minutes later and it's still there and there's no feet, no nose, you're not making progress. If you come back out and the calf is out or the calf is further along, then you're making progress, and you can sit back and wait another 30 minutes. Okay, let's see what we do next. When did you get 5 grandkids? Okay, Glenn, TSCRA would like you to answer this question live. Okay. When did I get 5 grandkids? 2 of them, right there, the 2 little boys in the middle. One is 8 and one is 4. And then my daughter has adopted these other children basically as her own. They are the children of her boyfriend. So I consider them my grandchildren. Does that answer the question? Okay, we got another one. What is the what is the ideal age for a heifer to calve? I don't want her to calve before the age of 2. There are reasons to hold off and go even to the age of 3, but the age of 2 is common. We breed these girls at about 15 months and turn around and try to calve them out at 24. Remember that we are trying to raise beef. We're trying to raise pounds of beef, and the number of calves that animal raises in a lifetime is very important. Okay, let's see where we're at now. Anybody else have any other questions? What are chats at the bottom of this thing? Do I need to go to that?
Yeah, Dr.
Andy?
Anderson, I think I see one more question. Is woody tongue treatable?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so woody tongue is just a bacterial infection that enters through a hole in the mouth. So I don't know about y'all's ranches, but mine has some cactus, it has stickers, it has cockaburs, it has mesquite, and cattle walk along and they eat anything. And this allows bacteria to enter into their tongue. Woody tongue is treatable. In my 30 years of bovine practice, I've probably lost 2 animals to woody tongue. The rest of them we're able to treat. You have to catch it early. Remember, with a disease that sets up in the tongue as a muscle in itself, they can't swallow, they can't drink, and they can't eat. So it's very treatable with antibiotics, both in the muscle and IV. Do we have any more questions? Okay, we all have to admit that these 5 kids are pretty cute, no matter what. We'll move on. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, the number affected. Number affected is just simply what's your comfort zone? You know, if you're running, my daughter does medical care for about 150,000 stockers, and some of those producers expect a 2% death loss, and they can walk out there and find 20 dead calves and not get super excited. And then I have producers that lose 1 cow that they named, Mary, and when Mary died, the world came to an end. So it's the number affected really is a personal question for you, and it's how deep are your pockets. We want to know if you really have a problem to begin with. A lot of clients will call us. I've had a lot of clients bring in newborn calves that they thought were ill, but it was just a calf that the mother had hid in the brush, and they found it and picked it up and brought it to the clinic. We need to know if your cattle are actually ill. You will get tunnel vision. You will determine in your mind, remember I told you not to believe your own BS or your own story, excuse me. But you'll get tunnel vision. You'll make up a problem until somebody can point out to you that it's really normal. So this answer of how many is too much really is up to you. It's up to your experience level, and it's up to your comfort zone. We don't like to see you go much beyond 2% of anything. 2% is the number that we draw. If 2% of your animals or more are affected, we need to know about it. If you've had a 2% death loss or 2% morbidity, which is illness rate, then we need to know that. But again, it is up to you. And it is something that you will have to determine on your own. Next slide. Okay, the number dead. Any unexplained or unexpected deaths, we need to see. We need to hear about, we need to talk about. I can tell you more stories here than almost any of these slides that we were on. You know, I've had clients drive out to their operation, have been working cattle all morning, gone into Dairy Queen to get a burger, came back, and they have 7 dead cows in the lot. That needs to be explained. That needs to be looked at. I have a client that has 1,000 head of sheep, and he went out, found 20 dead sheep. It is important for us to know this. We are the front line. Your veterinarian in the field is the front line for any disease outbreak that we have in agriculture. So if you can't explain what happened, or it is totally unexpected, even if it's just one animal, at that time we probably need to get out there and see it. If there are unusual deaths, we had a client that had 11 dead cows and 11 dead calves, and none of them matched. They were not pairs. And it took a little investigation, but it involved the root of a sycamore tree and a lightning storm. And all the cattle were standing on the root when the tree got hit by lightning and killed every one of them. But it didn't make sense at first. So if it's unusual, or it's unexplained, or it's unexpected, you really do need to call the veterinarian before you get a large number. We've talked about this bottom line here, this sometimes it's 1 and sometimes it's 10. Again, anything unexplained we need to see. And then once you reach that 2%, you really need to start trying to figure out if you're going to break even. If you lose more cattle, is this going to be something that affects you economically? We had an operation in the northern part of the county that about March in a year, he started going out and finding, you know, anywhere from 3 to 6 or 7 dead cows a day. And he didn't call right away. He actually got up to where he had lost nearly 50% of his cow herd. He only had 80 cows, and he had already lost about 32 head when he decided, hey, that's too many, I'm going to go and call the veterinarian. And when we got out there, it was a long investigation. It took several days, but basically what it was, he's feeding protein tubs. The protein tubs were being made basically in somebody's garage, and they had half of what they were supposed to have in it. What was on the label was half of what was actually in the tub. The cattle were literally starving to death. We talked about body condition score. Their body condition score basically was a 2 out of 9. A lot of these cows would, once they laid down, they would never get back up again. He ended up selling what was left of his herd. But we often wait too long. We wait to the point where it's become disastrous and not simply a disease issue. We had another episode, and this is still going on in our part of Texas, where 24 bulls were castrated. Of that, 23 died. They died over an 8-day period. That client started calling us at day 1 when the first bull died, the first steer died. That turned out to be Clostridium, so it was a form of blackleg that had entered through the castration wound, and then ended up killing the calves within 8 days. We were able to at least identify it. We were able to instigate some action to prevent it in the future, change their vaccine protocol, and use antibiotics. So again, the number dead is a good indice of when you're going to call. But if you're going to remember anything today, think about if it's unexplained or unexpected or unusual, you need to call the veterinarian that day. Next slide. Okay, so we need to determine if it's an emergency. First of all, do you really have a problem? We talked about that. If you've been able to take the TPR, look at your cattle, you know stuff is not normal, you know things are not going the way they should be. So you call your veterinarian, you share that data with them, then we'll determine if it's an emergency and we need to come out. So we've got a couple rules here that work pretty well. One is if something is on the outside and should be on the inside, it's an emergency. So that's a prolapsed uterus, an eye, bull's penis. These things need to, if it belongs in the cow and it's not in the cow, come on, y'all, it's an emergency. If it's on the inside and should be on the outside, we need that. So this is calving. If it's been longer than an hour, if you don't see a nose and 2 feet or a tail and 2 feet, it's on the inside and it should be on the outside. If an animal cannot urinate, if an animal cannot defecate, these are emergencies. If a cow cannot eructate, if they can't belch and they bloat, this becomes an emergency. I had one audience member a couple years ago at TSCRA say it's also stuff like hunting arrows, you know. Hunting arrows should be on the outside. If they're on the inside, we got a real problem. You know, to a point, he's right. That's not what we had in mind when we wrote this down, but it works. If greater than 5%, I had told you 2% for death loss, but if greater than 5% of your herd is affected, let's draw that in the sand, and at least that warrants a phone call. We've already talked about any sudden death. We can reiterate it. There are a very short list of things that cause sudden death, and so that would instigate an emergency situation. This says calving greater than 2 hours. We have shrunk that down to an hour because 2 hours was not working for us. If you have not seen progress within an hour, you need to call the veterinarian. It becomes an emergency. There's something on the inside that needs to be outside. And we've already talked about the rule of 3, which is 2 feet in a nose or 2 feet in a tail. A lot of times you'll go out. Oh, that's okay. Leave that up. That's good. Okay, we'll go back on that. A lot of times you'll go out and you'll think you have an emergency. Remember to walk through the steps. What is normal? How much of my herd is involved? Is anybody bleeding to death? Is anybody have a prolapsed uterus? Is it something that needs to be handled immediately? If you have a question, that's enough of a reason to call the vet. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So this should be close to the last slide, but it's going to leave a lot of times for questions. So when not to call the vet? If it's not yours. Y'all, we cannot come out and castrate your neighbor's bull. We can't come out and treat an animal that's not yours. If you feel that there's an animal welfare issue, you need to call your county sheriff. You need to let them know about it. Don't call the veterinarian if the animal that you want treated or the animal that you want to ship and you need health papers, it's not yours. Don't call, especially when you're dealing with really young veterinarians, don't call if you already know that what you're asking for is not legal. We've had a little rash of this up here. We get it every year this time, especially with show steers, where people want to get sedatives to either train or to show their animals. Y'all, it's not legal. We're not going to do it. If you're going to ship cattle across state lines and you want to forge your health papers or you want to indicate on your health papers something that's not in the trailer, don't ask your veterinarian to do this. It just leads to veterinarians not wanting to stay in the rural environment and not wanting to stay in practice. Also, if you're not wanting to pay, it's hard to get young veterinarians to move to the country. Right now, we are running 7 clinics and we are 2 veterinarians shy. This makes life entertaining, but we have to pay these young guys. We have to pay the veterinarians to stay where they're at and to practice quality medicine. If you feel that hiring a veterinarian will lose your profit, we need to sit down and have a longer conversation. If you're not wanting to comply with what you've been told, you probably shouldn't call the vet. They will give you really good information, but if they are not your primary information source, or if they are not the source that you trust, it makes no sense to call them. So you need to comply with what they prescribe to you. You need to comply with what they offer you as medical treatment or preventative care. And the last one is don't call if the animal's not caught. We are very expensive cowboys, and to have a veterinarian come out there and you expect them to rope the animal or to catch the animal, it just gets costly, and it will take away from your ability to make money. At our clinic, we want to tell our clients that don't use us if we don't make you money. It's about beef production. And one of the ways we do that is make sure the animal's caught. We are paid by the hour. Let us come out, let us treat the animal or animals, and let us leave, and we'll try to make you money. So if it's not yours, if it's not legal, if you're not wanting to pay or comply, and if the animal's not caught, these are good reasons not to call a veterinarian. And I think, go to the next slide. Okay. Production tips before you call the veterinarian. First thing, guys, don't panic. A lot of times we have people that panic. We have cattle that suffer from their owners not keeping a level head. Know your story. So when you call, be sure that you have your data in front of you, that you've kept your records, that you have the TPR, that you have the chronicity of it, that you have the severity of the disease. Maybe you've taken pictures. That's down a little further. Maybe you've taken videos or audio recordings. I've had audio recordings sent to me of an animal's respiratory system. Have your data in front of you. Know your story. Also know what you have done. And I don't mean that accusing you. I mean that how have you treated this already? What drugs have you used? What level of drugs have you used? How have you given these drugs? And what are the results of the treatment you've given? And the last one you may laugh at, but it's actually know where you live. So we are still a rural county, but we have a lot of people from the Metroplex that have moved here, and they will give us directions from Dallas. They're all backwards. They'll tell us to turn left when we should turn right. So we had a story, a colleague of mine in Oklahoma, he received a call from a dairyman at the time and said he was having trouble delivering a calf. And the veterinarian said, so how do I get to your place? And the dairyman said, you just follow the fire trucks. My dairy barn is on fire. So we'll take almost any direction you can give us. There's a great story. It's probably, let me see what time it is. I tell it real quickly, it might work. So right around Christmas, a few years back, we got a call to go out and vaccinate some heifers for a client. This was not a normal client. It was out of our practice zone. The morning we woke up to go, it was extremely foggy. We left before sunup. It was easy when we were still in our practice zone, but when we got out of our practice zone, his directions really didn't make a lot of sense. He gave us a few highway numbers and he said, go to You See Jesus and turn right. We were driving through the fog. We couldn't see any roads. And I began to get worried. In Texas vernacular, you know, if I've gone to see Jesus, I've already passed on. We kept driving down the highway. Finally, we made a right turn. For no other reason, it was the first road we saw. And halfway down that road, a cowboy flagged us down. We crossed the cattle guard and we palpated all the cows. All the heifers, vaccinated them, palpated them, turned around to leave. And I said, I just have to ask you, why in your directions does it say, go to You See Jesus and turn right? He said, you'll see it on your way out. The fog's lifted. You'll see what I'm talking about. And sure enough, where we turned off the highway was a 30-foot concrete statue of Jesus rising through the clouds. We had just missed it in the fog. Y'all make sure that your directions are really precise. Make sure that the veterinarians know where you live and make sure you know where you live. Next slide. There you go. So if you look real hard at that slide, there's a rainbow at the end of this thing. That's a highway up here in Montague County, but it just sort of tells us it's a long road. There are rewards at the end of it. Do we have any more questions? I guess I can press on this. Okay. Woody tongue treatable, we did. I now have 10 sheep on our farm with our cow-calf operation. I don't feel like our vet knows much about sheep. Any ideas? And what is the best animal to protect our sheep? So we have a lot of sheep. A lot of sheep in Montague County now. It's become extremely popular. The best animal I have found to protect sheep are dogs. Get yourself a cross of an Anatolian Shepherd and a Great Pyrenees and raise them with your sheep, and they do an excellent job. Don't make a pet out of them. Finding a veterinarian that knows a lot about sheep can be a challenge. You can get online and look. There is a small ruminant veterinary practitioners organization that you can find, and they can help direct you toward veterinarians in your area that know sheep. Any other questions? Anybody?
Well,
Okay.
you've done a great job. That was very quick and simple when it came to the questions. Oh, I think we've got a couple more coming in here. We'll grab a couple more, but for those of you who have any final questions, please be sure to post them in the Q&A box before we end up today. And as a reminder, this has been recorded today. And so this recording link will be emailed out to all of you for viewing at a later time. It looks like we have one more question unless more come in. What is your opinion on banding versus cutting?
Okay, so we can talk about this. We don't like banding at all, not in the least. It leads to a higher incidence of tetanus. It leads to mistakes being made. We had a ranch that castrated 75 bulls with a banding operation. We got to see 21 of those 3 months later. The scrotum still had not fallen off. Now there you have chronicity. You have a large percentage of the herd affected. You have something that's still inside the animal that needs to be off. And these bulls were extremely ill and could only be sold for salvage. So we would not band. If you're going to band, I want you to do it in under a month of age. We use clips, we use ecrasures, we castrate with a knife or a scalpel or a Newberry knife, everything over that month of age. We have also seen banders not being put on correctly, bands not being put on correctly, leading to a high incidence of tetanus. So I would just recommend not banding at all. Okay. Another question?
Yeah, looks like we have another one. It says, I have a cow that's pregnant. It looks like she's lame to be a rear leg injury. Can she still carry the pregnancy? Is it better to sell her for salvage? She looks to be healthy except for a rear leg injury.
Okay, so the first thing you want to do, you've noticed what's wrong, you've noticed what's not normal, is that she's limping. You need to have that diagnosed as to why is she limping. Is it simply foot rot? Is she an old cow that has arthritis? Is she at the end of gestation and the calf is actually laying on a nerve and causing her to limp? So you need to diagnose what the lameness is. If she's at the very beginning of gestation and it's a serious injury where she may lose stability as she gets bigger and heavier with pregnancy, it might be better to sell her. But it's a situation there where I would call your veterinarian and try to have the what's causing the lameness, the actual pathology diagnosed, and then sit down and say, you know, she's supposed to calve in a month. Can we hold off that long? She will bring me more money as a pair, or if she's able to even raise the calf. So in that situation, I'd call a vet and have a firm diagnosis of what's causing the lameness. If she's eating and drinking and acting normal besides that, chances are you're going to calve her out and then you're going to cull her next year before you breed her. That would be my recommendation.
Great. Well, thank
Okay.
you so much, Dr. Anderson, for the time. Looks like we have a lot of compliments coming in. Thanks for all of your help and for continuously serving the TSCRA membership. For those of you who have any remaining questions, or if you come up with any questions afterwards, you can always send us an email, education@tscra.org. And as a friendly reminder, this will be emailed out to everyone for watching 24 hours from now. So thank you for your time, Dr. Anderson. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
It's
And
really fast.
yeah, no, you did great. We got in just under 1 hour, and we hope the rest of you have a great week. Thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.